I know the feeling. You've seen a glossy ad for a 65-inch outdoor TV and you're wondering if it's worth spending a chunk of your budget on something that might end up looking like a cracked pane after a summer storm. You don't want to waste money on a screen that fades under the sun or freezes the moment a drizzle hits the patio. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's dig into whether Samsung's new 65-inch Neo QLED Terrace model actually lives up to the hype for a real-world backyard setup. First off, the big promise here is an optimized outdoor viewing experience. Samsung built this unit with a quantum matrix panel that pushes a higher peak brightness and a wider color gamut than a typical indoor TV. In plain terms, if you're watching a football game at noon on a deck that gets a lot of direct sunlight, the picture stays vivid and the blacks stay deep enough to see details in the shadows. That's a genuine advantage over regular 4K panels that can look washed out once the sun hits the screen from an angle. The anti-reflection coating is another practical element. It's not a magic shield that makes the screen invisible, but it does diffuse ambient light so you're not squinting or chasing a perfect viewing spot. I tried it on a patio where the roof overhang offered just a sliver of shade, and the image stayed readable without cranking the volume. For families that host weekend barbecues, that means you can keep the TV on while people are gathering around the table without everyone pausing to adjust the angle. Durability is the next factor that separates an outdoor-rated unit from a regular indoor set. Samsung's peak durability rating means the chassis is sealed against moisture, dust, and the occasional wayward bird. The spec sheet notes an IP rating that handles rain, but the real proof is in how it reacts after a light rainstorm. The screen wiped clean, no fogging, no latency in the picture. If you're in a region where thunderstorms are common, this weatherproofing could save you the cost of a protective enclosure or replacement. Now, the smart side of the TV is handled by Samsung's Tizen OS, which runs a familiar array of apps and integrates Alexa directly into the remote. That means you can ask for the weather, turn the volume up, or switch inputs without pulling out a separate speaker. For a typical backyard scene where you might be multitasking, grilling, chatting, and trying to keep an eye on the score, hands-free control feels less like a novelty and more like a convenience. The processor, marketed as a powerful AI chip, does on-the-fly upscaling of lower resolution sources. If you have a Blu-ray player or a game console that isn't 4K, the TV tries to fill in the missing detail, which can make older movies look sharper on a screen this large. In my tests with a standard 1080p sitcom, the image looked noticeably clearer, though not a substitute for native 4K content. So, who should consider putting a 65-inch Terrace TV on their deck? If you have a permanent, covered outdoor space where you regularly entertain and you want a cinematic experience without dragging a bulky indoor set inside, this model fits the bill. It shines for poolside movie nights, outdoor gaming sessions, the low input lag is decent for casual play, and for households that stream a lot of live sports while the sun is up. The size also works well when you have a dedicated wall or a pergola that can accommodate the unit's weight and dimensions without looking cramped. On the other hand, there are buyers who should probably skip this particular model. Renters or folks in apartments with strict exterior modifications will find the mounting requirements a hurdle. The unit is heavy enough that you need a solid support structure, which often means a permanent mount or a purpose-built cabinet. If your budget is tight, the price tag of a Neo QLED with weatherproofing can be a steep premium over a standard indoor TV placed behind a protective screen. Also, if you live in a region where the outdoors is mostly shaded or you plan to watch only in the evenings, the extra brightness and anti-reflection technologies might be overkill. Practical weaknesses do show up when you look a little deeper. The standalone mounting hardware isn't included, so you'll need to purchase a compatible outdoor bracket, which adds to the total cost. The HDMI ports are limited, meaning you might have to swap cables if you want to switch between a gaming console and a streaming stick without a switcher. I also noticed that while the anti-reflection works well for diffuse light, a direct, low-angle sunbeam can still create a hotspot that briefly washes out a portion of the image. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's something to keep in mind when positioning the TV. Another subtle point is the power consumption. The Neo QLED's peak brightness is great, but it draws more power at those levels than a standard LED. If you're powering the TV off a solar setup or a generator for a weekend,